Okay, write a mul function which will work properly when invoked with the below syntax. Now the syntax I'll show you in a minute is basically a function call with 3 individual parameters, each enclosed in their own sets of parentheses. Now mul could also be spelled out to say, multiplication, right? So we're going to create this multiplication function which will work with 3 individual parameters, each within their own set of parentheses. So as you can see on the screen here, this is what we've been given by the questioner or the interviewer, let's say, and we need to make this work, right? So how can we create a function to make this work? Now this is unusual. Typically you see something like this, you'll see something with 3 parameters like this where they're all together inside the same parentheses. This is a little different. So how can we answer this question? Well, to do that, we're going to create a new function called mul that receives 1 parameter, 1 argument, x, and we're going to, inside of this function, we are going to return another function, an anonymous function, that accepts the argument y. And then inside of this function, we're going to return 1 more function, which accepts z. Okay, so now that we've identified x, y, and z, or our 3 parameters that we looked at the beginning there, 2, 3, and 4 is the first example, 4, 3, 4 is the second. Then we can multiply these in their own return statement. So we're going to return x times y times z. Now we can go ahead and run this. And you can see we have our answer, 24 and 48. Now, we can actually write this as a one-liner. Okay, so we'll do that. I'll keep this on the screen so you can see it, but I'll just call this one const mul1 equals x. Now we're going to use arrow functions here because basically an arrow function is returning the function, right? It's the return statement, right? So because of this, we can actually just write it like this: const mul1 equals x, arrow function y, or returns y, returns z, and then returns x times y times z. So now if I were to change these calls right here to mul1 and run it again, you can see we have our answers. So if you ever see something like that where you have multiple parameters in their own parentheses like that, you can call it like that. We can even actually add one here. So if I say add another, we could return here. We could say, okay, I need to nest another function. Return function, we'll just call it n. Okay, we'll move our final return into here, and then we can say times n. And we'll change this back to mul. And you can see we have 120, right? Which 24 times 5 is 120. So yes, that's pretty much how we would do it in JavaScript. In PHP, it's pretty similar. You can see I've changed the statement here from console.log to echo. Now, this is actually pretty simple, pretty concise as well. And it's going to look very much the same. So we're going to call this function mul, and then our x inside of here. And then we're going to return our anonymous function that accepts y. But the thing we need to do different here is if we try to use x inside of here, let's say we have return x times y. Let's see, let me hide this one here, comment that out, and just change this to the 2 parameters. And then I were to, let's see, call this, I'm getting a parse error. Oops, forgot that I need to add the semicolons here. I forget that when I switch back and forth from JavaScript to PHP. Okay, so now you can see we have a undefined variable x, right? So that's this x right here, and that's because it's not defined inside of this anonymous function where we've called y. So to fix that, we need to add the keyword use, and then in parentheses we're going to say use x. Now if we run that again, you can see it works, right? We get 6. 2 times 3 equals 6. Okay. So that's the difference here, is we need to use the use keyword. So let's go ahead and undo our changes here. Okay. So now let's continue on here. We need to add a second anonymous function, return function with the variable z, and then we're going to use x and y. And I see that I accidentally took off my use x up here. Okay. Now we can return x times y times z and add our semicolons. Okay. Now let's go ahead and run this. We get 24 and then 48. So yeah, it's pretty much similar to JavaScript, all except for the adding the use keyword. So that's how we can answer that interview question, right? And make that multiplication function work. And just for your reference, that is called a curried function. It's basically a function that takes multiple arguments, one at a time, and returns a function that takes the next argument.